All right, so today we're going deep on something that I think can really make a difference in how you think about your money and really how you live your life.
We're going to be looking at how understanding like what you really value, what's important to you can actually like change your financial decisions, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And the source material we're using for this deep dive is from a book called Smart Couples Finish Rich. It's by David Bach'.
Specifically, we're looking at pages 42 to 50, and it's this real-life example of how a couple, Kim and Bill, they go through this exercise called the value circle.
Yeah, the value circle. And I think what we're hoping you get out of this deep dive is, like a practical way to figure out what your own values are, what really matters to you.
And then kind of see if like how you're using your money right now actually matches up with those values.
Yeah, because this isn't just about like saving money or spending less. It's like bigger than that. It's about living a life that feels, more meaningful.
More purposeful.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's get into this. The book introduces this idea of a value circle, and it's really interesting.
It's like shifting your focus, right? Instead of starting with like budgets and numbers, it's starting with your why.
Your why, yeah, why are you even doing this? Like, why are you trying to save money or, get your finances in order?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and that can be so much more motivating than just, trying to follow some random rule.
Totally. And to show us how this works, the book uses this example of a couple, Kim and Bill, and
Yeah.
Kim goes first with this value circle thing.
And it mentions that she kind of like looks to Bill at first, almost like she's asking for permission or something.
Yeah, it's like, is it okay if I do this? And I think that's so relatable?
Totally. Like when you're asked to really think about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
it can be kind of intimidating, right?
Yeah. Do you think it's like a fear of being judged or maybe just not being used to like self-reflection?
I think it's both of those things.
Yeah.
There's this pressure to just go with the flow and not really rock the boat.
Yeah, not really examine things too closely.
Exactly. So this exercise, it's like a tool to help you actually do
Right.
that.
I don't really go deep.
Yeah. And Kim, she jumps in and her first value that she comes up with is security.
And you find out that this is like deeply connected to her childhood. She grew up with a lot of financial insecurity.
So for her, it's not just about like having money. It's way more emotional than that.
Yeah, it's about feeling safe and stable.
Right. And the book points out when they asked her why security was so important, she immediately thought of her daughters.
Yeah, she wanted to make sure that they felt safe and taken care of.
So you can see how our past experiences like really shape what we value,
For sure. And then her second value was family.
which makes sense right after talking about her daughter.
Totally. But it wasn't just about like having a family. It was about raising her kids to be happy and well adjusted.
Yeah, it's about the quality of that family life.
And her third value was marriage. She wanted a strong, lasting relationship like her parents had.
And this is really interesting because the book mentions that she knew a lot of people who were getting divorced.
So it was like something she was actively thinking about and wanting to prioritize.
Yeah, it shows that she's not just taking it for granted.
All right, so then she had to come up with two more values, and she got a little stuck.
She first thought of exercise, which, a lot of people would probably put on their list.
Yeah, it's important, but is it really a core value?
That's the question, right? So the book kind of guides her to think about what's behind that. Why is exercise important to her?
To go deeper, basically.
Yeah. And she realizes that it's really about health.
So health became her fourth value.
It's not just about looking good. It's about feeling good and having energy and living a long life.
And her fifth value was fun.
Oh, fun. That's a good one.
Right, she wanted more spontaneity in her life, more travel, more time with Bill and her friends.
Yeah, like a little bit of that carefree feeling.
Exactly. And it's interesting because she also thought about putting career as a value.
Which is totally valid. But the book kind of helps her see the difference between the career itself and what it provides.
Which in her case was security.
So she realized that she was already covering that with her first value.
So her fifth value ended up being security career, recognizing that for her, they were really intertwined.
It's like they were two sides of the same coin.
Okay, so now let's move on to Bill's value circle.
Bill's turn.
And his first reaction is hilarious. He basically just wants to say ditto.
Which I think a lot of couples can relate to.
Totally. It's like, yeah, what she said, I agree with all of that.
But the book makes a good point that even in a really close relationship, you need to do your own thinking.
Yeah, you need to figure out what matters to you specifically.
Exactly. So Bill starts thinking, and his first value is freedom.
And this was really about wanting to escape the grind of his 6-day work week.
He was feeling burnt out and just wanted more control over his time.
And that led him to his second value, which was time.
Because time is what gives you freedom.
Exactly. And the book gives these really specific examples of what Bill was missing out on, like windsurfing and playing golf.
These were hobbies that he used to love but didn't have time for anymore,
And when they talked about why he wanted to do those things, it came back to fun.
which is similar to Kim.
But
True.
Bill's version of fun was a little different. He actually landed on excitement as his second official value.
He wanted to do more active things, more engaging things.
Kim even teases him about it in the book, calling him a watch television every night exciting guy.
Which I thought was funny.
But it shows that he was being honest with himself about where he was at.
Yeah, and willing to acknowledge that he wanted something different.
Okay, so his third value was family marriage, which lined up with Kim's.
He saw them as really interconnected.
And then his fourth value was friends. He missed hanging out with his buddies, just shooting the breeze.
That casual connection is so important.
Yeah, and it's easy to let it slip away when you're busy.
And his fifth value was parents. He wanted to connect more with them and make sure his kids knew their grandparents.
Which is really sweet, especially since they live far away.
Kim even makes a comment about how they should call and email more.
It's like a little reminder that sometimes it's the simple things that matter.
Right, you don't always need grand gestures, just consistent effort.
So they had their lists of values, but the book emphasizes that they didn't just write them down. They made these value circles, like actual circles.
Why do you think that visual is so important?
I think it's because a circle shows that all these values are connected and they need to be in balance.
Yeah, if one of them is off, it throws the whole thing off.
Right. The book even uses the example of someone who's really successful in their career, but their marriage is falling apart and they're neglecting their health.
They might have a lot of money, but their life isn't truly rich.
Exactly. And that's the whole point of this exercise, right? It's about being rich in every area of your life.
And that means making sure your financial decisions support all of your values.
Okay, so once Kim and Bill had their value circles figured out, they had to take a hard look at their actual financial behavior.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Because it's easy to say you value something, but are you actually living that way?
That's the real test.
So for Kim, security and family were huge, but they hadn't even made a will yet or set up a trust. It's funny how we overcomplicate things.
But the book calls this value synergy, because by playing golf with his friends, he's fulfilling two values at once.
And Kim realized something similar about their annual vacation. They spent a ton of money on it.
But they could probably have more fun if they took more frequent, smaller trips.
Like weekend getaways or even camping trips.
It's about the quality of the experience, not the price tag.
And Kim also brought up this bigger concern about their overall spending. She felt like they were spending too much.
And that was preventing them from focusing on what really mattered.
It was like a wake-up call.
Yeah, a moment of realizing something needs to change.
But the really cool thing is that this value circle exercise didn't just end with them feeling bad about themselves.
They actually turned it into a plan.
A purpose-focused financial plan.
They took those values and turned them into concrete actions.
So the plan had 3 parts. Their values do ideas, which were specific things they could do to live those values, and have ideas, which were material things they wanted to achieve.
It's like a roadmap.
And the results were pretty amazing. In just 5 weeks, they made a will, they increased their life insurance. Kim joined a gym.
Bill planned that golf outing, and they both started working on spending less.
That's a lot of progress in a short amount of time.
It just shows what can happen when you're clear about your values and you're motivated to live by them.
And the big takeaway here is that it's not about just having stuff. It's about being the kind of person who lives according to their values.
Money is just a tool to help you do that.
So we hope this deep dive into Kim and Bill's value circles has given you some things to think about.
Yeah. What are your top 5 values? What are you doing right now to support those values?
Are there any areas where your spending habits are out of sync with what you really care about?
This isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
Keep reflecting, keep adjusting.
Figure out what makes a rich life for you.
And use your money to make it happen.
You got this.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
See